The Medium's Book of Mediums, Part 2, Chapter 25, on invocations. And I've had said before, invocations is prayer and is calling to spirits. It's not like a sorcerer summoning spirits, although some of us, and it's already said, even in Spiritism with Kardec, some of us have more of an ability to invoke spirits, and others of us are more spontaneous, even if you're trained that spirits come to you that they can't call out to one to make them come to the yard, basically. Um, I'm more of a medium that can invoke spirits that, uh, by leading misa, by leading prayers, um, you are calling on spirits. And you can see why it's useful to have that ability, because you're setting up a session. You need to be able to call spirits at that time. And there are ways to call spirits, but they're not in this mode of working with the good spirits. You can't force them to come necessarily, especially in this system of spiritism. And good spirits have a lot of their own power and their own sensibilities about whether or not they're going to come when you invoke them. Whereas it's easier to have domination over a lower spirit and to more force them to do things. But these are not the type of spirits they're sought after to communicate with in Kardec Spiritism anyways. Whereas we want to work these spirits in Kardec and Cruzado, because we want to actively help these spirits when we're in the position and safe position to do so, usually in a company of other mediums. General considerations: spirits who may be invoked, language to hold with spirits, the usefulness of special invocations, questions on invocations, invocations of animals, of living persons, and human telegraphy. General considerations: spirits can come spontaneously or come at our call. The call is an invocation. Some people think that we should not invoke a certain spirit because it's preferable to wait for one who wishes to communicate. The opinion that you shouldn't call spirits is in the fact that calling a specific spirit, we are not certain that it is the spirit who will present themselves. Well, he who comes spontaneously of their own impulse may better prove their identity and announces their desire to converse with us. However, as an absolute, this is an error, because there's always spirits around us, mostly of a lower class, who wish to communicate. And if you do not call on any particular spirit, the door is open to all those who wish to enter. And so that's why we pray to our guardian spirits. That's why we call good spirits who are willing to support our life choices, good helping spirits of light or of a certain elevation, to join the ancestral realm. And that's also why in Cruzado, just because someone is dead who is a family member, that doesn't necessarily make them an ancestor as well. In African traditions, they have to reach a certain level of concern for the community or morality, etc., or helpfulness or goodness to be considered an ancestor. Um, the direct appeal made to a designated spirit is a bond between us and them. We can call them by our desire and thus erect a kind of barrier against intruder. Without a direct appeal, a spirit has no motive to come to us unless it is our familiar spirit. These two methods each have their own advantages. The difficulty is only in absolute exclusion of one or the other. There is no trouble in regard to spontaneous communications where one is a master of the spirits and is certain not to let any bad gain domination. Then it is useful to wait until the pleasure of those spirits who wish to communicate with us. We must always be scrupulous in our examination of spirits and spirit communication and contacts always, in regular and have regular routine with our good spirits so that they regularly come. They become accustomed to coming, um, or can come without being called because they're used to being called. They're pre-engaged, or they're always already used to working with us or around us. They may spontaneously begin in the beginning, but then develop, with a subject, a proposition, or get involved in a project or what should be done. And then these spirits can be easily recognized by their language or writing or habits. When we wish to communicate with a certain spirit, they must be invoked. If they can come, an answer is usually obtained. Yes, I am here, or what do you want of me? Sometimes they enter directly into the matter, anticipating the questions that is proposed to them. However, when a spirit is invoked for the first time, it's best to designate with him some precision, some questions, but we must be affectionate or respectful. Um, Also, I'll add, like, we have certain ways that the spirit will show respect to us as well. Respect of your priesthood, respect of the medium, or respect of all those present. They'll address the head medium, or they'll go up to the table or show some kind of religious sentiment. We'll answer in a certain way so that we know what type of spirit we're dealing with as well. Our familiar spirits are almost always with us. They're identified with our own thoughts, like our guardian spirits, our primary spirit guides. Does not require much time to come to us. If an invoked spirit cannot come instantly, um, then we'll be given a message of a delay. Um, Possibly they'll say when they can come, or send a messenger. The messenger is not always an intermediary, because even through this intermediary, um, when you pray to a specific spirit, they say it's always heard, whether or not you get a response, because we're transmitting thoughts, direct thoughts, like our brain to like their spiritual brain. Invocations or prayers or present more difficulties to mediums than spontaneous dictation, when especially if because we want exact answers to circumstantial questions. So these special mediums are required to be flexible and positive, and it's more rare to have these special good mediums because our energy and our fluid body is not always matching up with spirits that come. So therefore they're saying that mediums should not attempt special invocations until assured of the development of their ability and faculty, have the support of other mediums around them, etc., development and know the nature of the spirits who assist them. For those who are badly surrounded, the invocations or prayers could have no character of authority. And I talked before about establishing spiritual autonomy and authority. Mediums are generally more sought of for invocation of private interest and general interest, by the natural desire we have to converse with those who are dear to us. So, like, for example, some people don't come with general spiritual questions like what do the spirits have to tell me that I need to know most now. Sometimes that's the best question to ask, other than I want to talk to my grandmother. That's not really concerning general humanity or necessarily like the aim of the spirits. It's more of a natural but more personal need. I wouldn't really call that selfish, really, but it can be. Um, you must go to people who are sincere, who you can trust. Be on guard against charlatans and malicious people. If at any time you discover motives of curiosity, and it's not seriousness, to contact these spirits, then refuse them silly, idle questions. The questions must be clear, and the answers must be without evasion. Spirits do not like to be put to proof if they are negative, because they want to deceive. So again, our questions must be frank and open for the desired end without trickiness or subterfuge or windings with the good spirits. If they, the spirit or the medium does not want to explain themselves, or you better abstain from this. If you don't want any criticisms, you better abstain from this practice. It's best to, if prayers are made absent of the one who asked them, then there's also challenges because the person's not being criticized directly. And the person, their bond attracts the spirit. So if someone wants to, distance is not really any object necessarily, but it's better to have the person asking you to talk to their grandma present, because the grandma will be attracted by the person, basically. Um, like I've had instances where person spirits don't want to talk to me for certain reasons, and you either have to prove your sincerity or be persistent or get the person to give their spirits permission, like explicitly, to talk to you. They could have even booked you, but until the person talks to their spirits, that might not happen, etc. And then we have spirits who are bridges to us for other spirits. Like most spirits don't have the same prejudices, but say one did and didn't want to talk to you, then one of your own spirits who is more like that spirit can then help bridge the gap or convince them to talk to you, basically. Spirits who may be invoked. They may be invoked to whatever degree of scale that they belong to, good, bad. Those who are more recently to, they have died a long time ago. Famous people to the most obscure, our relatives or friends, those who don't care about us. But they can always come to our call, whether or not of this relationship, if the spirit wills to come to us, basically. Permission may be refused to talk to a spirit by a superior power. There may be motives we don't know about. Obstacles that hinder manifestation of a spirit are almost always individual and pertain to circumstances, so case by case basis. Among the causes that oppose manifestation of a spirit, some are personal, some are foreign. Um, it might be that they're on a spiritual mission that they cannot turn aside to yield to our wishes. In this case, the visit is only postponed. So just because the spirit doesn't come now doesn't mean when we try again a month from now that they won't come. Our own state of our own incarnation has influence, like the influence of the medium and our interior spirit and worlds, matching with them. Why we're calling them. The sympathy or antipathy, the attraction or repulsion of the spirit to us, who takes pleasure or repugnance in us, the innate qualities of the medium and abilities. Spirits come more willingly with us, medium, who there's not as much of a material obstacle in doing so. There's also morality conditions, and the greater that we've developed a faculty like automatic writing. If we're good at several things, then our abilities are more generalized, more like a generalized versus more specialized practitioner. Then we can do more or less. Again, our fluidic relations, our energy relate, how we're related by energy. A spirit who is in the habit of coming as if it is as home is more familiar with us, and acts and speaks more freely with us. A spirit can come at any moment as they please, say what they please, go when they please. They're a good spirit of a certain power, or cease to come at all. Um, when we wish to call a new spirit, it's generally necessary to ask our guide and protector. Our ancestors, our gatekeepers, that's why it's very important to work with them first, and our own spirit guides will help to keep bad spirits out, and protect us, basically. We must approach them with a serious and instructive aim and in a view of improving ourselves and them, then there will be less difficulty. Um, the good spirits can give us this power or come or give us the power of invocation, but will also punish us if we misuse this faculty and leave us or let bad spirits come in and punish us. Ascendancy, again, is exercised over inferior spirits only by moral superiority in the system of Spiritism. For example, we must only oppose them with a strength of will, a kind of more than just our own will, because this is kind of a brute force that we will struggle with a negative spirit who are often going to be take the better of us or be stronger in this mode. If a person tried to tame a rebellious spirit only by their will, the spirit answered them, "Let me alone with your bullying airs. You are no better than I." They may say, a thief preaching to a thief. One is astonished that the name of God invoked against spirits is often powerless. St. Louis has given the reason in the following answer. The name of God has influence over imperfect spirits only the mouth of him who can use it with authority by his virtues. In the mouth of a man who has no moral superiority over the spirit, it is a word the same as the other. It's like saying cabbages instead of Jesus. It is the same with holy things opposed to them. The most terrible arms are inoffensive in hands unskilled in their use or incapable of bearing them. And that's also why, like, when you're facing an oppressive spirit, to humble yourself and appeal to the power of God to do this. And so it's not just you using all powerful Jesus magician using the Jesus name. Like, you have to be very authentic in the tools you are using and be like aligned with that if that's what you're going to be using. The degree of superiority or inferiority of the spirits indicates what we should be doing or the tone to take with them. The more elevated they are, they have more right to our respect, our regard, and our submission. We should show them deference and follow their advice, and explore their motives. Um, we can only secure their kind feeling by the sincerity of our sentiments. We can not flatter their vanity because they care not for this. It will displease them. It is more agreeable um, to be more in sympathy with them. Um, because there's no other greater spirit than God, you can't really flatter them with their own spiritual greatness as a spirit. As to the inferior spirits, their character shows the language and proper to use with them. There are some, although inoffensive, even kind, are trifling, ignorant, or stupid spirits. We cannot treat them as serious spirits or as to bow before a scholar, instead, an ass muffled up in a professor's cap. A tone of familiarity would not be out of place with them, and they do not necessarily take offense of criticism. They often, sometimes, will even willingly receive it. Among the inferior spirits, there are some who are unhappy, or they're generally considered unhappy, and so we can alleviate their sufferings and bring them more happiness. We're not without our own faults. A kindness we show to them is a comfort with them. In default of sympathy, they should find the indulgence or mercy that we wish them to show to us. And oftentimes, These negative spirits, when they're helped, will come back and help us later. Spirits who are even more negative by lies, etc., um, are less worthy of our interest than those who will show any repentance. We owe them the pity we accord to the greatest criminals, and we should be silent to them to show that we are superior. They indulge in the perversity only among people who think that there's nothing to fear in trafficking with them. So it's not that we should fear them; it's just that we shouldn't think that we should. There's no danger in indulging them either. For perverse spirits feel their masters in good men, as in superior spirits. As much as it's irreverential to treat superior spirits as equal, so as it is ridiculous to extend this to all spirits. Have veneration for those who deserve it, gratitude for those who protect and assist us, and for others show some kindness we may need for ourselves. For we are all creatures more or less perfect, and we raise our veneration mostly only to God. So that's why we don't worship ancestors and we don't worship orishas necessarily. It's more of a veneration. There's a difference in the two terms. Special invocations or prayers, only from very superior spirits, have exalted teachings, a degree of perfection, a greater spirit of ideas. They can penetrate greater mysteries of the limits of humanity and can initiate us into certain paths or things. Less elevated spirits are not without utility. We may draw more than one instruction, but we must study from every angle. Elevated spirits are so often far away from us in elevation, or even if we think like materially, they're like way far in outer space versus us on Earth. Like that's very like metaphoric. Kind of like spirits who are bourgeoisie or like very rich people. We feel the more distance between us and them as poor people, for example. Poor in spirit versus rich in spirit. Um, but they have learned, there's a difference, they have learned of all characters of men, good and vicious, great and small, happy and unhappy, men who have lived among us, who have we seen and known, or in the past lives. Um, they comprehend our joys and our sufferings, our virtues and whims. Basically, what it's like to have been human. They don't forget that, but we can draw from them their life lessons that they have learned to in order that they have gone through the process of spiritual progression and learning. We can learn more about this from them than just a mirage of celestial glory or some kind of idea of what like heaven's like with like Grecian pillars and flowing gowns and white clouds is not as useful to us. Lower spirits or ordinary spirits have an advantage of putting us in rapport with suffering spirits who can be comforted and whose advancement may be facilitated by useful advice. So we can be useful, but at the same time, we're also instructing ourselves. We're not only perfecting lower spirits, we're perfecting ourselves in doing this as well. And as I said, we're a mirror for the spirits. Um, we cannot disdain helping a helping hand to unhappy spirits or use this as look at me. Look what I'm doing. If this trafficking with spirits of the highest order does not make us inwardly better or more charitable or more benevolent to our brothers, both in this world and the other, what would become of the deceased if doctors refused to touch their sores? Questions on invocations. Can we invoke spirits without being mediums? Yes, anybody can pray, invoke spirits, even if you cannot tell or the spirits cannot manifest themselves materially. Spirits are nevertheless always around us and can listen to us. And I often say that to people who are grieving or seeking mediums, that just because you can't see your grandmother, again, I'm using the grandmother example, doesn't mean that they're not around you, doesn't mean that they can't hear you. So people need to take comfort in that, just because they haven't had a grand vision doesn't mean that they're not around us and they're not helping us. Does the spirit invoked always come when we call them? That depends on the conditions and circumstances. There may be some times that they cannot do so. What prevents a spirit from coming to our call? First, the corporeal state, if they are reincarnated, the missions which they are charged. But I'll also add again, we can communicate with spirits who have incarnated, because the soul is reincarnating. The actual personality remains in the spirit world, and that's who we're talking to, is all, like shells of the soul that we will cast off, and we'll gain another one um, when our soul re-enters the world again, basically. So we've already cast off. Bree has already cast off 5 ghosts, basically personalities that I've lived before. They may still be around, but I'm keeping on gaining. So my next life, if I'm a Michael, Bree, the spirit is still going to exist, but then Michael